Imagine a single treaty, inked in secrecy and hope, changing the fate of an entire continent. Picture a world on the edge where the future of millions hung in the balance, and the actions of a few determined leaders would decide the course of history. In 718 AD, that's exactly what happened. The world watched as the city of Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire, faced its greatest threat yet. This isn't a story of epic battles, but of desperate diplomacy and an unlikely alliance that saved a civilization. It's about leaders who saw beyond old grudges and chose negotiation over endless war. The Byzantine Empire, under siege and on the brink of collapse, reached out to its old rival, the Bulgars. With enemies at the gates and hope fading, the Byzantines knew they needed help from the most unexpected source. Together, these two powers forged a pact that would halt the seemingly unstoppable Umayyad Caliphate. Their alliance didn't just save a city, it reshaped the destiny of Europe, ensuring that a new chapter of history could be written. Let's dive into this pivotal moment, where survival depended not on the sword, but on a handshake, and where the courage to trust an old enemy became the key to survival. The Treaty of 718, a forgotten agreement that echoes through history, reminding us that sometimes peace and unity can be mightier than any army. The early 8th century was chaos. The Byzantine Empire, once mighty, was battered by endless wars and internal strife. Meanwhile, the Umayyad Caliphate surged from Arabia, conquering lands from India to Spain. Constantinople, the jewel of Christendom, was their next target. The Byzantines were exhausted, their resources drained, and their leadership unstable. The Umayyads saw an empire ripe for conquest. With the empire's survival hanging by a thread, only bold new leadership could avert disaster. Enter Leo III, a new emperor facing impossible odds. In the year 717, the mighty Umayyad Caliphate set its sights on the heart of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. Determined to conquer the legendary city, they launched a massive assault that would become one of the most dramatic sieges in medieval history. Over 100,000 soldiers and 1,000 warships gathered, forming a formidable force that surrounded the city by land and sea. The scale of the invasion was unprecedented, striking fear into the hearts of Constantinople's defenders. Emperor Leo III, newly crowned and untested in war, now faced a siege that threatened not just his reign, but the very survival of the empire itself. The fate of Byzantium hung in the balance. The city's legendary walls, renowned for their strength, and the terrifying weapon known as Greek fire, managed to hold off the relentless attackers. Yet, as the siege dragged on, supplies dwindled, and hope among the defenders began to fade. Then came the harsh winter. Freezing winds and snow battered both armies, but the besiegers suffered most. Starvation and disease swept through their camps, weakening their resolve and decimating their numbers. Inside the city, Emperor Leo knew that Constantinople could not withstand the siege forever. Every day the situation grew more desperate, and the people looked to their leader for hope. Leo prayed for a miracle, searching for any sign that help might come. He realized that survival would require more than just courage and faith. It would demand cunning and alliances. The answer, as fate would have it, lay to the north, with the powerful Bulgar tribes. Their intervention could tip the balance of power. In the end, it was not just the strength of Constantinople's walls, but the art of diplomacy and the forging of crucial alliances that would decide the city's fate and shape the future of the empire. Leo III turned to Khan Tervel of the Bulgars, a former enemy. Both leaders saw the threat. If Constantinople fell, the Bulgars would be next. Leo offered Tervel gold, trade, and recognition of Bulgar lands in exchange for military aid. Tervel agreed, and the alliance was sealed. In 718, Bulgar cavalry struck the Umayyad camp, catching them off guard. The besiegers, weakened and demoralized, were crushed between the city's defenses and Bulgar attacks. The Umayyad army collapsed, forced into retreat. The siege was broken not by force alone, but by a bold alliance. Victory led to the Treaty of 718, formalizing the alliance between Byzantines and Bulgars. The treaty set borders, established trade, and created a mutual defense pact. For Byzantium, it meant security in the north and a chance to recover. For the Bulgars, it brought wealth, prestige, and recognition as a major power. The two former enemies became partners, stabilizing the Balkans for decades. This diplomatic triumph showed that shared interests could overcome old hatreds. The treaty's impact was immediate peace, prosperity, and a new balance of power. It was a masterclass in survival through cooperation. The Treaty of 718 did more than save Constantinople. It became a turning point that changed the destiny of an entire continent. At a time when the city stood as the last great barrier between East and West, its survival was far from certain. The fate of Europe hung in the balance, and the decisions made in those tense days would echo for centuries. Had the city fallen, the Umayyads might have swept into Central Europe, forever altering its culture, faith, and even its languages. The spread of Islam could have reached deep into the heart of Europe, changing the course of history and reshaping the very identity of the continent. The world as we know it today might look entirely different. The alliance forged in desperation preserved Byzantium as a shield for the West, buying precious time for new kingdoms and cultures to grow and flourish. This fragile peace allowed Europe to recover, rebuild, and eventually rise to new heights, setting the stage for the medieval era and beyond. It set a powerful precedent. Enemies could unite for survival, forging alliances that would shape the future of diplomacy. This moment of cooperation showed that even bitter rivals could find common ground when faced with a greater threat, influencing the way nations would interact for generations. The Byzantine Empire's survival also safeguarded ancient knowledge, preserving priceless texts and ideas that would later fuel the Renaissance centuries later. Without this protection, much of the wisdom of the ancient world might have been lost forever, leaving Europe in a cultural and intellectual darkness. The Treaty of 718 stands as proof that diplomacy can be as powerful as war. It reminds us that sometimes the pen truly is mightier than the sword, and that the choices made at the negotiating table can shape the fate of nations just as much as those made on the battlefield. One nearly forgotten pact, countless consequences. How different might our world be if it had never been signed? The Treaty of 718 is a testament to the enduring power of unity, strategy, and hope in the face of overwhelming odds.